I think it's championship or bust for Cleveland. I think Cleveland's in that category.
No,
I
don't think so.
Okay,
I think moving forward. I mean, granted, there's a small margin for them to uptick on what they did last year, but I mean, look at the names and look at the pressure that puts on Baker Mayfield to continue to be that player for this organization. We've had multiple people come on our show and say this team can win a Super Bowl. Like those expectations will continue to build
the pieces
over the course of the offseason. We were going to talk about, well, what were they missing last year? Well, they were missing a really big physical wide receiver, a guy like OBJ who can catch those 50-50 balls. Okay, like you retooled the defense, Jadeveon Clowney. Okay, like Kevin Stefanski, Baker Mayfield, he's coming. They're getting ready. Like they're in that upper echelon. Like, why are we not talking about the Browns like they're not in that upper echelon with the Bills and with Kansas City? Like, well, that's who we're expecting them to compete with. And everybody else is in championship or bust mode.
Well, that leads me to this, too. Look at the schedule. And, you know, what we learned, by the way, by doing Market Madness, what I love about it is we are learning about different markets. And we learned about Cleveland that Baker Mayfield is now their favorite son. They talk about Baker Mayfield like the reaction to us saying, if you're Cleveland, do you call about Aaron Rodgers? Of course you do. And Cleveland apparently said, no, you don't. You don't touch Baker. That's our guy. We don't want Aaron Rodgers. So with that in mind, consider their schedule and where we could be. And we mentioned this earlier in the show when they play the Steelers. All right, in week 8. They play at Kansas City to start the season. That's tough. But then it's Houston, Chicago, at Minnesota, at Chargers, Arizona, and Denver.
But see what
they
I
could
was
be
saying,
6-1.
Yes.
Don't dismiss Chicago, don't dismiss Minnesota, and don't dismiss the Chargers.
Well, especially at Minnesota, as you know.
They had bad years. Just because they had Minnesota and the Chargers didn't play well.
Key, I know what you're doing, but just play. I
along.
completely understand. Just play along though, because the point is Baker mania, let's call it, could be at its peak going into the game against Pittsburgh. Could be is what I'm saying. And that is when the expectations, like you're saying, Jay, could then start to ramp up to, hey, this team's 6-1. They're going up against the Steelers. If they win that game 7-1. Wait, when do we start talking about them as that team?
Let's even take it a step further, Alan. Like, what bucket do you put the Browns in? Are they in the upper echelon of the AFC?
Remember when the Steelers were like undefeated, but we didn't buy it?
Yes. Right. So are we putting them in the same bucket with the Bills?
The Browns and the Bills. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would put them in the same bucket.
Aren't the expectations of the Bills to win a Super Bowl?
Well, see, again, there's
obviously,
but
then
there's another bucket.
Both of these teams competed down the stretch against Kansas City, right?
Yes, so that's why.
So you see it, you're like, we could beat those dudes. Like, even if
there's
it's
two buckets, though. The Chiefs are in one bucket.
I love being on this show with y'all because I just can't get into the unrealistic part of it. We keep forgetting the other teams have gotten better.
You just said Kansas City's going to go undefeated.
I understand.
What are you talking about?
But Kansas, and I also said Kansas City's in a whole nother world than everybody else.
They're in a different bucket.
They're in a way different bucket.
I agree.
They're not in a bucket. They're in a damn trash can. So let's not forget about that, Jay. Now I'm progressive. But let's not forget about that. But those other teams out there are going to get better. We still don't know what Denver's going to do. I honestly think that the New England Patriots got a whole lot better than they did a year ago. Oh, a way better football team than they were a year ago. People keep pointing to Cam Newton. Cam Newton was sorry last year. Cam Newton didn't play with nobody. He had COVID. All of those sort of things. They've gotten so much better. But Bill Belichick is probably saying, shh, don't say anything right now. Okay. We don't know what the Miami Dolphins' end game is going to be, and they were not a bad football team. They drafted well. We think they're going to probably be better. So when you start saying that Cleveland is a Super Bowl bust team, I push back on that.
All right,
because the Ravens have gotten better.
But let me clarify though. What I'm not talking about. What I'm saying is by this point in the season, because of the schedule, right? By looking at their schedule, that would be the conversation because that market loves Baker, right?
Yes.
The Browns are as good as they've been in decades. And if you look at the schedule, and the schedule does not include New England that you mentioned, does not include the Ravens, does not include Miami, it doesn't include Buffalo. These teams that you're saying, well, we got to measure it against them, they're not going to see them yet. So my point is, it's not necessarily about legit Super Bowl contender, but as we know, the hype machine grows. And when you're 6-1 going into a game against a rival in a division like Pittsburgh, that could be where the mania, the Baker mania, really
but
takes
it's
its
not even, you don't
height.
even, Alan, you don't even need to go into the schedule. The hype has already started, and we're in the offseason. The hype has started when you decided that Trevor Lawrence, when you decided that Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to be your quarterback of the future in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
When you made the decision that that's not the direction you're going, that now put the expectations and the hype on what the Cleveland Browns feel about their team.
Do you think you're like, regardless of whether they are 6-1, 7-1 at that point, which the schedule, if you look at it, you could argue it, and maybe if they did a power index, they might even tell you percentage-wise what it would take to get to that. But I just look at it as a team we don't normally talk about at that level. We could be at that point talking about them at that level, like Jay is saying, putting them in the same bucket as the Bills,
Well,
as the team that will push the Chiefs.
I think historically they're going to be one. Historically, they were bad. Then they got good this past year, and they will be one of the teams in the end that'll be hovering around trying to play against Kansas City in the AFC Championship game. They will be one of those teams.
Okay. I mean,
and one of those teams will be a Buffalo, a New England, depending on what Denver gets, Cleveland, Baltimore. Pittsburgh lost too much. I'm just not,
Yeah, they look like that.
They look like, they just
right.
You still are you that high on Baltimore?
I mean, Baltimore.
It's a big year for them.
Yeah,
I know you rave about Bateman. I understand that.
Big proving year.
Are we putting Baltimore, considering the season we saw last year from Lamar Jackson, in the same category as the Browns or the Bills?
I am. Yeah.
Okay. I feel like they're maybe in that bucket, but they're the last team in that bucket.
Because Lamar balled last year. Lamar didn't have an MVP season because he set the bar so high. But Lamar still balled last year despite not having a crazy amount of weapons on the perimeter for him. He still balled.